What if the most powerful love stories of 2025 weren't straight at all? Japan's BL dramas didn't just break hearts, they broke records. From quiet romances to bold confessions, these weren't side stories anymore. They were the story. Get ready to relive the tears, the chemistry, and the chaos. Here are the top 10 Japanese BL dramas that stole 2025, and maybe your heart too. Hira and Kiyoi. The beauty in worship and wreckage. From My Beautiful Man, sometimes love doesn't arrive wrapped in warmth or tied in a bow. Sometimes it crawls in, messy, uneven, painful, and yet unforgettable. That's the kind of love that existed between Hira Kazunari and Kiyoi So. From the outside, it looked like obsession. Hira, with his stutter and shame, placed Kiyoi on a pedestal so high he forgot what it meant to look someone in the eye. He didn't just admire Kiyoi, he worshipped him, and not in a healthy, poetic way. He followed him, served him, even lowered himself just to be near him. To Hira, Kiyoi wasn't a boy, he was a god. But Kiyoi didn't ask to be worshipped. He was beautiful, yes, confident, cruel, magnetic. But beneath that golden boy exterior lived someone deeply lonely. Someone who wanted to be loved not as an idea, not as a fantasy, but as a flawed human being. So when he saw Hira lowering himself again and again, it didn't flatter him. It wounded him. Kiyoi didn't want a servant. He wanted someone who could see his darkness and stay anyway. Their love was a slow, brutal unraveling. Not the kind you find in fairy tales, but the kind that cracks something open inside you. Through silence, humiliation, heartbreak, and anger, they danced around each other, never quite meeting in the middle. And yet they never walked away. Because beneath all the miscommunication, there was something pure. The desperate need to be seen, truly seen, by someone who still chooses you. When Hira began to rediscover his own worth, not as Kiyoi's subject but as his equal, everything shifted. And when Kiyoi let go of his pride, allowing himself to be vulnerable, something tender emerged from the wreckage. Real love. Imperfect, but real. In the end, Hira and Kiyoi's story isn't about obsession. It's about evolution, about how queer love, like all love, must be learned, must grow through pain and self-discovery. Their journey shows us that beauty isn't found in perfection, but in the courage to stand on equal ground and say, I love you anyway. Nozue and Togawa, a love that refused to expire. From Old-Fashioned Cupcake. Falling in love past 30 isn't trendy. It doesn't make headlines, it doesn't come with youthful sparks or reckless promises. But for Nozue, a man who spent years hiding behind routine, love came like a quiet knock. Unexpected, persistent, and it had a name, Togawa. Nozue wasn't searching for anything. Not adventure, not change, and definitely not romance. He had already accepted the idea that life had plateaued, a steady job, casual friendships, a loop of days that blurred into weeks. But Togawa, his junior at work, saw what no one else bothered to. A man who still had a heart that could burn if someone dared to light it. Togawa wasn't flashy. He didn't woo with big words or bold gestures. He was deliberate, gentle, dangerous in the way that only truth can be. Because while everyone else respected Nozue's boundaries, Togawa quietly questioned them. Why not eat dessert on a weekday? Why not laugh a little louder? Why not love me if your heart already does? And that's what shook Nozue. Not the age difference, not the workplace rules, but the terrifying idea that someone could see him, all of him, and still stay. That maybe love didn't belong to the young. Maybe it belonged to the brave. Their story isn't about breaking rules, it's about rewriting them. It's about learning that vulnerability is a strength, not a flaw, and that happiness at any age is worth fighting for. Nozue had spent so long being the dependable one, the quiet one, the safe one, he forgot what it felt like to be chosen, truly chosen. Togawa never pushed. He just waited, one moment at a time, until Nozue realized something radical. Love doesn't check your birth year. It checks your courage. In the end, Old-Fashioned Cupcake isn't just a story about two men falling in love. It's a reminder that you're never too old to start feeling young again. Sometimes the second half of your life holds the sweetest surprises. All it takes is someone who sees you and stays for dessert. Kijima and Kido, a love not meant to be gentle, from the novelist Pornographer. Some love stories arrive like sunshine through a window. This one cracked the glass. Kijima and Kido didn't meet by chance. They collided. A motorcycle accident, a fractured arm. And suddenly, Kido, a quiet, unassuming young man, found himself in the orbit of Kijima Ryo, a man who lived in shadows and wrote about things most people dare not say out loud. Kijima wasn't looking for love. He was barely holding himself together. Bitter, brilliant, broken. His writing was explicit, his chaotic, his heart walled off. But Kido entered gently and then stayed. What started as a favor, transcribing Kijima's words, turned into a strange intimacy. Not soft, not pure, but something neither of them could walk away from. Their story isn't warm, it's electric, full of silence, tension, control. Kido begins as an observer, but slowly he becomes Kijima's reflection, exposing the loneliness behind the genius, the hunger behind the anger. And Kijima, for all his cynicism, starts needing him, not for the work, but for the presence. The stillness. The calm inside the storm. There's no grand confession here, just long stares, quiet care, a hand on a shoulder that says more than any line of dialogue ever could. The question hangs in the air. Is it love or dependency? Is it power or surrender? The answer is complicated, and that's what makes it beautiful. Because love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp, it cuts before it heals. It forces us to look in the mirror and face what we've buried. For Kijima and Kido, their connection doesn't promise a perfect future, but it offers truth. And in a world built on masks, that might be the rarest kind of love. In the end, Kijima didn't just find an assistant. He found someone who stayed through the silence. And Kido, he learned that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about choosing them, even when the ink runs dark. Adachi and Kurosawa, love that hears what's never said. From cherry magic, 30 years of virginity can make you a wizard. Sometimes, the loudest feelings are the ones we're too afraid to say. That's the quiet magic between Adachi and Kurosawa. One is an anxious, awkward office worker who suddenly gains the ability to read minds after turning 30. The other, a confident, charming colleague hiding a tender secret. He's been in love with Adachi all along. This isn't your typical fairy tale. Adachi doesn't wake up with confidence. He doesn't transform overnight. He stumbles, he overthinks, he panics over eye contact. But through Kurosawa's thoughts, raw, unfiltered, loving, he finally sees something he's never dared to believe. He is worthy of being loved, not for being extraordinary, just for being Adachi. Kurosawa, on the other hand, isn't the flawless prince he appears to be. He's strong, yes, but his strength comes from vulnerability, from waiting patiently, from falling in love with someone who didn't even realize he mattered. Kurosawa never forces, never pushes. He simply hopes. And in that hope, there's something deeply brave. What makes their story so quietly powerful is how it normalizes the small things. A shared umbrella, a bent head, a soft smile in a hallway. Their love doesn't burn fast. It glows slow. It teaches us that sometimes the hardest thing isn't falling in love. It's believing someone could love you back. Together, Adachi and Kurosawa give us a love story that celebrates consent, kindness, and emotional growth. A story where magic isn't just a plot device. It's the courage to hear someone's heart, and the grace to respond with your own. So maybe the real magic wasn't the mind reading. Maybe it was finding someone who looked at your insecurities and stayed. Which of the couples so far has stayed in your heart the most? And which couple touched something in you? A memory, a hope, a truth you didn't expect. Tell us whose love stayed with you and why it still lingers in your heart. Maki and Haruta. Some love stories begin with heartbreak. This one begins with a punchline. Ossan's love doesn't ask to be taken seriously, at least not at first. It gives us Haruta, clueless, straight, or so he thinks, and emotionally allergic to anything deeper than dinner plans. Then there's Maki, calm, capable, mysterious, and harboring a secret so ordinary it's extraordinary. He's in love with his roommate. What unfolds between them isn't some sweeping drama. It's a romantic comedy where the romance sneaks up on you. Disguised in laundry, quiet meals, and one too many shared beers. Haruta doesn't fall in love the way most people do. He panics, he runs, he gasps for air at the thought of being loved by another man. But Maki never pushes. He simply remains, present, kind, heartbreakingly patient. Their chemistry isn't built on grand gestures, it's built on timing, on awkward silences, on the way Maki looks at Haruta like he's the only person in the room, even when Haruta can't look at himself. And slowly, something shifts. Haruta's fear becomes curiosity. His denial becomes attention. And in one of the show's most moving turns, the joke stops being funny because the feelings become real. This isn't a story about shame or secrecy. It's about how love can feel ridiculous before it feels right. Maki never demands that Haruta change. He just offers a version of love that's safe, steady, and surprisingly fun. And Haruta, against every instinct, starts to ask himself, what if this is exactly what I've been looking for? Nishi and Ito, growing up, growing apart, still holding on, from life, love on the line. Some love stories don't end, they evolve. That's what makes Nishi and Ito unforgettable. They didn't meet in a dramatic twist of fate. They met as teenagers, walking the same white line on the road, trying not to fall off. It started as a game. But what grew between them, over time, over years, was anything but playful. Nishi is wild-hearted, emotional, and afraid of standing still. Ito is disciplined, calm, and afraid of being seen. They come from different worlds, but when they're together, it feels like time stretches, like nothing else matters except the space between their footsteps. Their love begins in secret, grows in silence, and survives through change. But life, love on the line, doesn't sell a fantasy. It gives us reality. As they age, pressures creep in, careers, family expectations, shame, and the unspoken fear of what if we can't make this work. And yet, they try, again and again. Because sometimes, love isn't about always holding on. It's about learning how to hold on differently. Their story aches in all the right places. It's soft, but never weak. It's tender, but never naive. Because real love, especially queer love, often asks, can we stay ourselves while still being together? Can we walk the same line, even if the world keeps trying to push us off? For Nishi and Ito, the answer is yes. Not in grand gestures, but in the quiet choice to keep showing up. Even when the line fades, even when the path bends, even when life demands more than love alone can carry. If this story moved you, even just a little, consider subscribing to our channel. We share these quiet revolutions of love not to prove anything, but to remind you that every kind of love matters, and that sometimes the ones who walk beside us the longest are the ones who never stopped believing. In the end, life reminds us that not all love arrives dressed in tragedy. Sometimes it walks in wearing slippers, making you breakfast, and making you laugh until you accidentally fall for them. Have you ever laughed your way into love? Or realized the person who truly saw you was standing right beside you all along? Share your story, we're listening. Yuki and Itsuki, the quiet space between us. From Senpai, this can't be love. There's a kind of love that doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't break things or demand to be seen. It just lingers, soft, persistent, waiting to be noticed. That's the kind of love Yuki carries for Itsuki. Not loud, not reckless, just real. Yuki is a junior designer, reserved, thoughtful, always watching from the edge of the room. Itsuki, his senior, is everything Yuki isn't. Composed, admired, emotionally unreadable. They work together, they talk like colleagues, but under the surface, every glance holds weight. Every pause feels like a question never asked. It's not romantic tension in the dramatic sense. It's something gentler, the ache of proximity, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, the person you admire sees you too. Senpai, this can't be love. Doesn't rush, it doesn't force, it lets silence speak. The story unfolds not in declarations, but in shared moments. A coat draped over shoulders, a message sent too late at night, an unspoken kindness that says, I notice you. And when feelings begin to surface, the fear isn't about being gay. It's about being vulnerable, about risking something that's been safe in silence. Itsuki, for all his calm exterior, hides just as much as Yuki does. He's older, wiser maybe, but not braver. And that's what makes their dynamic so quietly moving. It's not about one chasing the other. It's about two people slowly turning toward each other, afraid of what they'll see, and even more afraid of what it will mean if they don't look at all. This isn't a story of falling in love. It's a story of realizing you already have. And maybe that's why it resonates so deeply, because haven't we all at some point loved someone in silence? Held back a truth just to protect the fragile connection we already had? Shun and Nagisa, love that fought to be ordinary. From his, I didn't think I would fall in love. Some love stories aren't about falling in love. They're about what happens after. After the first kiss, after the quiet mornings, after the child calls one of you dad. For Shun and Nagisa, love was never a question. The world around them, that was the problem. Shun is a man who runs from judgment, from confrontation, from anything that reminds him his love doesn't fit the mold. He isolates himself in the countryside, raising his son in solitude, carrying a quiet grief for a relationship he once let go. Nagisa, the one he left behind, is the opposite. He believes in love that takes root, love that stays. So when he returns years later, it's not for drama, it's for truth. Their reunion isn't fiery, it's cautious. Two men, older now, facing the gap between who they were and who they still might become. They argue, they hesitate, but they also try. For the child, for themselves, for the version of love they still believe could exist, even if the world keeps telling them it shouldn't. His doesn't romanticize, it exposes. The shame, the legal battles, the way society questions their ability to parent, to stay, to love responsibly. And yet, amid all the noise, Shun and Nagisa find something precious. The quiet certainty that they belong, not just to each other, but to the life they've built. What makes their story extraordinary is how ordinary it longs to be. No secrets, no running, just two people raising a child and sharing a home. And in that simplicity lies the most radical statement of all. Queer love deserves not just to survive, but to thrive. Because love, in any form, is still love. It deserves safety, it deserves dignity, it deserves to grow without fear. So as we share these stories, we're not just celebrating couples like Shun and Nagisa. We're reminding the world, same-sex love is not a phase. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a family, a truth, a future worth protecting. Yukimura and Aoyama, when luck runs out, love walks in, for Mr. Unlucky has no choice but to kiss. Yukimura Shuji doesn't believe in luck, and for good reason. His life is a running joke, a string of mishaps held together by spilled coffee, late alarms, and every vending machine rejecting his coins. He's not dramatic about it, he's just tired. Until one day, by pure cosmic irony, the universe hands him Aoyama Riku, the guy who seems to live under a permanent spotlight. Tall, charming, and perfect. If fate has favorites, Aoyama is clearly one of them. What begins as a fake relationship, a silly ploy to reverse Yukimura's terrible luck, slowly twists into something neither of them expected. Aoyama, the golden boy, isn't just lucky. He's kind, patient, willing to look past Yukimura's grumpiness and endless self-deprecation. And Yukimura? For all his sarcastic armor, there's a softness he hides even from himself. A fear that maybe no one could ever actually choose him for real. Their chemistry is built on banter, on teasing glances, on ridiculous scenarios that somehow end in real feelings. But underneath the comedy, there's a genuine tenderness. Aoyama doesn't try to fix Yukimura. He just stays close, showing him that love doesn't require perfection. That sometimes the people who think they're cursed are simply waiting for someone to believe in them. What makes Mr. Unlucky Has No Choice But to Kiss so refreshing is how it balances laughter with longing. It reminds us that queer love doesn't always need to be heavy or hidden. It can be light, silly, sweet. It can be about two people who meet by accident, stay by choice, and build something honest. Not in spite of their flaws, but because of them. And maybe that's what love is, after all. Not luck, not fate, just two imperfect people learning how to show up again and again, even when the world keeps dropping banana peels in their path. Oki and Ida, when first crushes turn into quiet revolutions. From Kieda Hatsukoi, My Love Mix-Up. Some love stories start with a spark. Others begin with a borrowed eraser and a misunderstanding that quietly rewrites everything. Aoki is impulsive, expressive, all heart and emotion. Ida is calm, grounded, unknowingly magnetic. What begins as an awkward love triangle slowly unfolds into something honest, a journey of self-discovery, acceptance, and a love that dares to be both soft and sincere. Their story doesn't rely on grand declarations. It lingers in small, powerful moments. A hesitant glance, a shared silence, a heartbeat that finds its rhythm in uncertainty. It's not about confusion or shame, but about quiet bravery, the courage to say, "I like you," and the strength to reply, "I think I like you too." Kieda Hatsukoi offers something rare in queer storytelling, a same-sex romance that's awkward, funny, tender, and beautifully normal. Aoki and Ida aren't perfect, and that's exactly what makes their love feel so real. It's not about spectacle, it's about truth. What makes their story truly meaningful is the impact it leaves beyond fiction. BL dramas like this help normalize LGBTQ+ love, challenging outdated assumptions and reminding viewers, especially the young and questioning, that their feelings are valid, their love is worth seeing, and their stories matter. When shows choose sincerity over stereotype and vulnerability over fantasy, they don't just entertain, they quietly reshape hearts, minds, and futures. Watching Aoki and Ida navigate love with honesty isn't just touching, it's necessary. Because sometimes, the boldest kind of love is the kind that whispers, "You are enough." They made us laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again. From office romances to broken hearts healed by music, these weren't just stories, they were firestorms. Japan's BL in 2025 didn't just entertain, it shifted the culture. So here's the question. Which one hit you hardest? And which couple still lives in your head, rent-free? Because this isn't the end. It's only the beginning of something bolder. Drop your favorite in the comments, and if these stories moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us, where queer love always